Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Rick sent me a note, says, Steve, check out the story about this attorney, and this is amazing, from WDRB.com. Jason Riley wrote the story. Kentucky attorney asks judge to jail him with his client until the state evaluates the defendant's competency. So the attorney is so concerned about his client in the situation we'll talk about in a moment. He's actually said, Your Honor, I want you to lock me up with him so I can take care of him. A Shelby County defense attorney made a novel request by asking a judge to jail him alongside his client until the state's state-run psychiatric center gives the defendant a competency evaluation, which he's been waiting for more than a year. So the court has said, we're going to give this guy an evaluation, find out if he's fit to stand trial. Been waiting for a year. So in a motion filed Thursday, his attorney said his client would have already served out his maximum possible sentence if he'd been convicted of the charges against him. But he's still waiting for the evaluation by the state to determine if he's fit to stand trial. So that's one of those things that bothers me about our legal system, is that they get these nonsensical results like this, where they will hold you for a year to find out if you're fit to stand trial, where if you're found guilty, you'll get locked up for 6 months. And so if the guy wanted to, presumably right now, he could probably plead guilty and get time served. Except that the court's going to say, well, we don't know if he can plead guilty to that because we don't know if he's fit to make that plea. And so we'll hold him for a year to find out if he's fit to do that also. An official with the Kentucky Correctional Psychiatric Center in LaGrange testified last year there was a statewide waiting list of more than 300 defendants with a wait time of up to a year or more. And that's from piled up quite a bit since COVID. The waiting list had been about 80 people before the pandemic, but 80 people who had long wait times ahead of them. While in custody, the man's been unable to receive medication or treatment, and his attorney wants to be placed in the same cell with him to make himself available to more aggressively address what has become an unconscionable circumstance for his client, according to the motion. Defense counsel requests the jail be ordered to house him in the same cell with his client. I have never heard of anything like this, and I salute the attorney for making this motion for several reasons. One of which is it got the attention to get the story publicized. But number two, it sounds like he actually is concerned about his client. So every time I mention criminal defense attorneys, I get all kinds of people saying, Steve, criminal defense attorneys don't care about their clients. They can rot in jail for all they care. They just want to get the money. Here are guys saying, no, I'll rot in jail alongside this guy because I think it's necessary. So the attorney is requesting work release during the day so he can continue to represent his clients. He also wants to be brought in front of the court on a weekly basis to report on the mental health condition of his client. So the request will be made to the district court judge in a few weeks, and that's him asking to be incarcerated on November 9th. The point is to try to ease my client's suffering, the attorney said in an interview with the news. He is stuck and alone and has gone on long enough without any solution that has become a moral issue. I don't know how to fix it, but I know how to make it a little better in the short term. And if I was there with him, I know that I could at least make him more comfortable. But the attorney has also acknowledged that he is hoping the state takes notice of what is happening. If the KCPC knows that I'm sitting there waiting on them too, then they may be able to make an accommodation for my client. I don't want to be incarcerated, but I don't want this on my conscience anymore. And I do think there is a better way of getting this expedited. If there is some attention paid to it in any way, I hope it spurs KCPC to figure something out. So the man at the center of this, the defendant, was arrested last September, and he's charged with harassment, indecent exposure, fleeing or evading police, and attempted sexual misconduct for allegedly attacking a woman in a park. Those allegations are serious, but like everybody else who's arrested in America, he's entitled to, among other things, a speedy trial. A speedy trial. So the maximum sentence that he could face on those charges is 1 year in jail, which he has already served. So the attorney filed a motion for an evaluation last September, and the judge filed another motion in May. And, it's not the judge's fault in that sense, because there's a department that's supposed to be doing these evaluations. They go, look, we're backed up. We can't get to him. So the attorney says we need that evaluation to start anything productive for him. He said the judge has reached out to KCPC, which is, of course, the people who do these things, but it's unclear when this man will be evaluated. In August of last year, a Jefferson Circuit Court judge threatened to hold KCPC officials in contempt of court for repeatedly failing to follow orders to evaluate defendants on their competency to stand trial. The inaction has left hundreds of criminal cases on hold across the state, with some defendants jailed indefinitely and victims unsure when they'll get any resolution. The inaction has left hundreds of criminal cases on hold across the state, with some defendants jailed indefinitely and victims unsure when they'll get any resolution. KCPC is the only facility in the state that can conduct mental competency evaluations for people charged with a felony, which are, of course, the most serious of crimes. Officials at the center have said employees aren't intentionally defying the court orders. They claim there just isn't the necessary space and employees available to do them. So to deal with the backlog, the center has begun working with jails around the state to perform some evaluations through video conferences. Earlier this year, the Metro Department of Corrections director said the psychiatric center had begun working in Louisville and around the state to perform some evaluations through video conferencing or to send psychiatrists to the facilities instead of waiting for space to open up the KCPC. But while officials said the backlog has been greatly reduced, a spokesperson for the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services previously said there's only been a 10% reduction on the wait list statewide. Officials there did not immediately respond to a request for comment from the news. So, it's from WDRB out of Kentucky. It's an amazing story for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the attorney is actually saying, Judge, you can lock me up with my client. I think it's important that I be there and I can take care of and report on him. But meanwhile, can you do something to speed this process up? And oh, by the way, he's already spent more time in jail than the time he could get if convicted of what he's charged with. So there's a bunch of things wrong with this. But this story would not have made the news if the man hadn't done this, the attorney. And so I'm assuming and I'm hoping that this is one of those attorneys who's going to say that if the judge grants the motion, yeah, I'm going to show up at jail with bells on. You know, I asked for it. I want that to happen. But what we're really hoping here is that instead, the judge is going to be able to go up the ladder somewhere, figuratively speaking, and figure out where the bottleneck is. And if nothing else, get this guy to the front of the line or do something. But that wouldn't be fair to the other people who are in line, who've been waiting longer than him maybe. So somebody somewhere needs to figure this out. But there is that math problem. And that is that if the guy spends more than a year in jail awaiting trial for which he could be sentenced to a year in jail, you start wondering about this. And so something's got to be done. So is it a problem at the psychiatric center? Don't know. Is it a problem with the courts? Don't know. I do know that if they've literally got to take the people and transport them to one location for the evaluation and transport them back, that's a mess. That's a mess. Why don't the psychiatrists go out and visit jails? I mean, call me crazy, but that seems like such an obvious fix to this. Because I can tell you, and again, I mentioned from time to time I wrote a book about Timothy Masters, a guy who spent 10 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. The book's called Drawn to Injustice, and he and I co-wrote the book about his experience. And I remember in this book, we talk about this, the times that he was in jail or in prison and had to be transported. How much of an effort that is. Because you don't just toss the keys to the cruiser to one of the cops and go, hey, can you take Bob there up to the state capitol for an evaluation? Yeah, we'll see you after lunch. Maybe after lunch? Okay, cool. It's not how that works. So they got to have a whole process to take somebody out of a cell, and it usually takes a couple officers, and they take them down and they put them in a vehicle that's secure for transporting prisoners, and then they then drive someplace with the prisoner, and there's a whole process of getting them out, having them shackled, and all this stuff. If the psychiatrist just came in and did the evaluations, it would eliminate all of that. The psychiatrists have to travel a little bit, but it would be so much easier. That's just one thought that popped into my head for a story I just heard about for the first time yesterday. So there's got to be a better way. But as of right now, this attorney is my hero. And so his name is Matt Pippin. Matt Pippin. And a lot of times I leave names out of stories because it's like kind of like, does it really matter if the guy's name is Bob or Joe or, Stryker? Whatever. Okay? This guy, his name is Matt Pippin. He's an attorney. And he is my new hero. because he's actually said, Your Honor, my client's rotting in jail, and I want to go in there and rot right alongside of him until we get this taken care of. And so whether that happens or not is another thing altogether. But to make the offer, he's running the risk that he could get what he's asking for. So we'll see what happens. But Rick, thanks for sending it from WDRB.com. Jason Riley. Kentucky attorney asks judge to jail him with his client until the state evaluates the man's competency to stand trial. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Always be the first-rate version of yourself instead of a second-rate version of somebody else.